Hello, I'm Angeline Ong, and this is IGTV and your special look ahead to the week starting the 6th of May. And shortly we'll be joined by Tasty Live's Tom Sosnoff. But first, let's take you through the week. We've got Caixin early on from China, and also the producer price index, the latest print out of the Eurozone. RBA's interest rate decision, that'll be key if you trade the Aussie dollar. But from the UK, look out for sterling because that might move depending on what the retail sales monitor says. Halifax house price index, that will be key to those house builders that are also a favorite amongst our IG clients. Trade balance numbers out of Germany and factory orders will be interesting in a time when we have Xi Jinping, China's leader, coming to Europe for his first visit in around 5 years. And we also have API crude oil inventories out of the US. Midweek, look out for industrial production out of Germany and more in the way of crude oil inventory data. We've got trade balance out of China and also a Bank of England interest rate decision. No move expected, but right now, many banks out there perhaps looking at a June cut. Initial jobless claims out of the US, that'll be interesting. And also from the UK, first quarter GDP, these are the preliminary numbers, trade balance, industrial output, and also the Michigan consumer sentiment out of the US and the Baker Hughes oil rig count. Well, let's cross over live to Chicago now, where Tom Sosnoff is waiting and standing by. Tom, thanks so much for joining us. It's been such a huge week. We've had all those big earnings out already, Apple, a lot of the Mag 7 really. Which are the ones that were the standouts for you? And, is there much now to keep the markets going? I mean, we're seeing the markets hold up pretty well so far.
Yeah, I think the markets have held up really well. Considering we're except for Nvidia, we're pretty much through all the big names. And there has been, I guess you would say there's been more upside surprises than downside surprises. And I think there was some nervousness because the market was, starting to get into a little bit of a sell-off phase and it was starting to consolidate a little bit. We had our first, 5 or 6% correction in 2024. So I think that there was a little nervousness out there around, earnings and forward statements and things like that. And the crazy thing is, most of the surprises have been to the upside, and almost all the outlier moves. There's been some downside ones, like for example, AMD was down a little, and Starbucks was outside the expected move to the downside. But for the most part, all the big players, like Microsoft and Facebook and or Microsoft Meta, Apple, they've all been upside surprises. So, Apple was about 1.5 times the expected move. So I think it bodes well for the market. Plus, I think bonds have given the market a little support here. Bonds have had a little uptick since the Fed spoke, last week. So I think all of that together, the market at least on a very short-term basis looks pretty stable.
Now, because we've had all those big earnings already, is the key pretty much to the market Nvidia, which is out later in the month, or do you think really all the action's been had and markets are now just heaving a sigh of relief that the Fed didn't completely close the door to a rate cut this year?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I mean, there's no question that the market overweights the entire kind of Nvidia phenomenon, because Nvidia is much bigger than Nvidia. Nvidia encompasses lots of other, AI stocks, and that whole space is kind of what's carried this market in 2024. So I think that, the chip space, the AI space, all the drama around that and all the hype around that has kept this market really strong. And still there's tons of liquidity out there. The bond market has gone down, but it hasn't collapsed. So I think that yeah, you're right. I think that there's been a lot of risk off in the last couple of weeks, and vol has dropped back down under 15. Gold's kind of stabilized, crude oil's gone back down. There's just been a risk off mentality rather than a risk on mentality.
And finally, any potential surprises in the coming week? Anything that you see kind of lurking and keeping an eye on?
Well, anytime you're just a couple of percentage points away from record highs, I think the market always has risk. I think that there's, just thinking kind of on a big picture, I think that everybody's long. And I don't think there's a lot of healthy shorts out there. So I think generally speaking, the biggest risk to this market now is complacency and is really complacency and just a general everybody's got long bias. And I think anytime you get like that, there's some risk.
Thanks very much, Tom Sosnoff there from Chicago, from Tasty Live, part of IG Group. Now, let's take a look at the corporate calendar, which is equally as busy in the week. We've got BP, that's a big one to watch out for after Shell's results. Kenvue, and also Walt Disney out with second quarter earnings. We'll have a reaction piece on IG.com from Sean Murison on that. And JD Weatherspoon, BMW, AB InBev, Munich Re, and Airbnb also out with quarterly earnings. And ITV, John Wood Group also joins in, but there is trading, so an update on their most recent trading period. Last but not least, look out for IAG out with Q1 earnings. We'll also have analysis and fundamental analysis too on that stock ahead of its earnings on IG.com. And that's your special look ahead to the coming week. Until then, I hope whatever you do the weekend, it's relaxing and profitable. This is IGTV.